The story begins in the city of Paris, where there is a woman named Maria and her daughter Ophelia, who are being chased by witches. Wherever they go, they are always followed by witches who can turn into crows. The witches wanted the Necronomicon book that they were carrying. Maria then took her daughter, Ophelia, to an empty building, then told her to hide under their bed. After that, Maria sprinkled a magic powder that made her invisible. It wasn't long before Erla also entered, followed by her guards. Erla then asked Maria about the whereabouts of the book, but Maria replied that the book had been brought by her daughter to Deandra, the leader of the Good Witches. Knowing this, Erla was furious, because that means the remaining time of her life is not long anymore. Erla then ordered her subordinates to take Maria away. Meanwhile, Erla would check her surroundings, suspecting that Ophelia was still in this place. After looking around and not finding her, Erla left the place. After that, Ophelia carried out the plan that her mother told her to do. Ophelia was told to meet Huiba at Burgett Castle to ask for help in bringing her to Deandra. Meanwhile, at Burgett Castle, they were rehearsing a performance for a haunted dinner, but the butler Charles, who saw it, wasn't too impressed and warned Hui, but not to make any mistakes during the performance. After that, they were both surprised by the arrival of their first guest. Then they immediately went to the king's room to wake him up, because he was upset after being abandoned by his queen. Charles then reminded him that now he had to welcome the guests. Taking a deep breath, Julius finally went downstairs. As Julius was explaining the theme of the haunted dinner, he was suddenly interrupted by Little Boy, causing him to become blank for a moment. Fortunately, Charles was still there and helped him. After that, Charles left, and Julius continued his story. He said that there was a gallant Baldwin knight, and he had been brutally murdered in Burgett Castle, thus making his spirit exist and wander. Suddenly, the wall clocks and items began to move on their own, which turned out to be operated by Charles from the kitchen. Then from the direction of the kitchen appeared the figure of Huiba. He tried to scare all the attendees, but suddenly the action was interrupted by Little Boy earlier, so everything became chaotic. The audience, disappointed by the lie they had created, then left the castle without paying a penny. After that, Huiba kept on thinking positively, and he thought that the guests left because of him. Just as Julius was about to deny it, Ophelia suddenly came and said that she wanted to meet Huiba. That's because Huiba is the only one who can help her. Julius, who was confused, then told her to come in. But suddenly the door was immediately closed by Huiba. But a second later, Ophelia was already inside. She explained that she was a witch and the niece of Huiba. Huiba, who was surprised, immediately held an impromptu quiz, and Ophelia could answer all the questions very easily. After that, Ophelia asked for their help by saying that her mother had been kidnapped by the evil witch queen Herla. Julius asked her why she was kidnapped. Ophelia asked him to promise first, then she would explain the reason. Meanwhile, outside the castle, Erla found Ophelia's hairpin that fell earlier. She immediately rushed to the castle. While in the kitchen, they waited for Ophelia, who was unpacking the contents of the suitcase one by one to take something out. After the last suitcase was taken out, Ophelia took out a book and explained that it had been stolen by her mother. That is the reason why Erla is chasing them. It was because with this book, Erla could gain additional age and extraordinary strength. Huiba recognized the book, very excited, because he was a fan of Necronomicon books. Ophelia then explained that they would never be able to use the book because the side effects were very dangerous for them. Then the book started talking and started inciting Huiba to use it. Fortunately, Julius interrupted their conversation and put the book back into the cupboard. After that, Erla appeared with her guards and took Ophelia to the attic. The two men rushed to rescue her, while Huiba had his own plans. He went to get the Necronomicon book and appeared before them. Then Huiba cast a spell that made Erla bounce off. Seeing that, Ophelia was furious. She then told the others that now that Erla knew about the existence of the book, she might come back and destroy the castle to get the book. Now their only hope was Deandra. Because of the distance between the castle and the witch forest, Huiba took her to a magical broom that might harm Ophelia. Fortunately, Julius has a more make-sense idea. The next day, Julius took them to an airplane that he owned. They were going to the witch's forest using the airplane. Unfortunately, there were only 2 seats and a little luggage for Huiba that could be occupied. Finally, Charles, who couldn't come, let them go with a slightly uneasy feeling. As they flew to Diandra Castle, the Necronomicon book took the opportunity to tease Huiba. The book said that he would tell him how to become the most terrifying ghost. The tempted Huiba wanted to reach for it, but it resulted in a gasoline leak. Then, with the plane losing all its gasoline and Ophelia's spell not working, Julius had to make an emergency landing. They land in a village that looks like it has no human life. After a while, they decided to go to an inn. Before going inside, Ophelia recognizes the pictures on the door, saying that it's a protective spell. As they entered the inn, everyone suddenly became silent and watched them. Then a large man approached them and began to intimidate them. Julius, frightened, began to lie. He says that they have nothing to do with the witches. Ophelia, who was fed up with it, immediately said that she and her mother were good witches. They came there to save their mother, who had been kidnapped, and that required Diandra's help. Upon hearing that, Andrew immediately turned into a friendly guy. He then took them to a table and explained all the most popular menus in this place. He even revealed the secret ingredients, although none of them cared. At the same time, Andrew also told them that their ghost friend could also sit quietly with them. After dinner, Andrew took them to their room to rest. He then set up a line using salt as protection. Since their plane was still outside, Julius also asked Andrew for help to move the plane so as not to be suspected by the enemies. While they went to move the plane, Huiba was assigned to protect Ophelia. Ophelia then told him that she had heard many stories about him. She said that Huiba was known as the funniest ghost in his family. Huiba, who was initially happy, started to get sad hearing that, because as a ghost, he must be a scary, not a fanny. Ophelia, who saw Huiba in a bad mood, immediately comforted him by introducing the puppies that she often took everywhere. When she realized that one of her puppies was missing, Ophelia immediately went out to look for it. While Ophelia was away, the Necronomicon began to tempt Huiba again to open it. He wasn't tempted at first, but the Necronomicon kept urging him on by telling him that he could become the most terrifying ghost. In her haste to pick it up, the book was thrown towards the salt line Andrew had made. At the same time, Ophelia also returned. The shocked Huiba immediately picked it up the Necronomicon and hid it. Then he went out of the room. Not long after, a flock of crows entered through the window and carried Ophelia away, followed by the appearance of Erla, who took the suitcase away. Julius, who feels responsible, says their only hope is Diandra. Before they leave, Andrew warns them that they must always be careful because the witch forest is very dangerous. Julius then leaves a letter to be delivered to Burgett Castle. On the other hand, Erla, who was starting to lose her time, began to shuffle through the contents of the suitcase in search of the Necronomicon, but she couldn't find it. Back to Julius and Huiba, both of them are now in the forest. While they were lost, they found a bread witch's house. To confirm it, they approached the house. But as they approached it, they both fell into a trap. A witch then appeared. She said that she would show them the way to Diandra's castle. But in exchange, they had to accompany her to drink coffee and eat cake first. After that, the cake witch took them to her house. She served them with a variety of cakes that she had made. The witch started asking why they wanted to go to Diandra Castle. Huiba replied that they wanted to ask for help to save her sister and niece who had been kidnapped by Erla. He also added that Erla already had the Necronomicon book. The witch, who heard that, immediately rushed to get ready for the trip. The two of them, who were confused, started to get scolded by her. She said that if they didn't leave immediately, Erla, who had the book, would open the gate to the underground world and take all the witches' souls to gain power. After that, they arrived at the castle. Julius knocked on the castle door and said that he wanted to see Diandra. Eventually, they were allowed to enter, and they finally met Diandra. Diandra then brought them drinks. Huiba, who was thirsty, drank it right up. Then they talked about the kidnapping of Ophelia and Maria. They wanted to ask Diandra for help to find them. In the middle of their conversation, Hui Bo realized something was strange. He then began to ask Julius to leave. But before they could leave, Deandra suddenly transformed into Erla. Erla then said that the drink they drank earlier was in truth talk potion, so she also asked them about the whereabouts of her Necronomicon book. Julius replied that he didn't know and thought that Erla already had it, but Huaybo was different. Instead, he took out the book and gave it to Erla. After that, they were both taken to the basement. On the way, they attacked the guards and started arguing, before finally escaping together. Julius, who was annoyed by Huaybo's selfish behavior, left, but was prevented by the Cake Witch. The Cake Witch said that if they wanted to defeat Erla, they had to work together. After that, she took them into her house. The Cake Witch then gave Julius a cake that could turn him into a wizard so that he could infiltrate the castle again. After going through many things, Julius was finally able to enter the castle. When he entered, Erla was performing a ritual. Erla, who saw Julius as a newcomer, told him to come closer and asked him to sacrifice something for the ritual. Luckily, he had something for that, but the effect of the cake was starting to lose. Julius slowly began to return to his own appearance. He immediately pretended to go to the bathroom. Erla, who became suspicious, was immediately distracted by the arrest of the Bread Witch. Julius quickly left and changed into his true face. He then peeked in and saw the Bread Witch being turned into a pig and gathered with the other pigs. After Erla's ritual was completed, she ordered her subordinates to bring Ophelia and Maria. Without the guards realizing it, they followed her from behind. Julius and Huiba performed the action, where Julius would distract the guards, while Huiba saved them. Then Huiba apologized to them for causing so much trouble. After that, Julius came and warned them to leave immediately. Before they could escape, the guards came and surrounded them. When they were cornered, Charles suddenly came and defeated all the guards. After the incident, Ophelia made everything invisible to leave the dungeon. But in the midst of her efforts, her trick was uncovered by Erla. Erla, who was upset, then ordered all the guards to immediately throw them into the well. However, without their consent, Huiba took the Necronomicon book and threatened to destroy it. Erla tried to stop him and invited him to negotiate, but Huiba refused, saying that he would throw it into the fire. The panicked Necronomicon magic book then offered Heim one free spell. Huiba agreed, and his friends looked a bit disappointed. After that, he whispered a wish, and when the spell was cast, all the dark magic turned into good magic. After that, things began to come back normal. Maria turned the pigs into their original forms. Afterwards, Julius praised Huiba for giving up his biggest dream of becoming the creepiest and scariest ghost, and instead saving everyone there. A few weeks later, at Burgett Castle, they all could earn a lot of money because of the children who wanted to take pictures with the world's funniest ghost, that is Huiba. And with the joy of Huiba's popularity as the funniest ghost, the movie ended.